Hey y'all, I'd just like to take a couple moments to go through some of the exemplar or example IAs. The first one I'll be talking about and going through is HL exemplar number one. And it's a company considering expanding or trying to expand their market share in the American scrapbook market. Now, scrapbooks are memorabilia. It's a book that people include pictures and notes and receipts and things that help to remind them about their past and events that they've attended and those types of things. So there's three links here. One is the actual original IA written by the student. This is the IA with some annotations done by me. And then this last part is the score that it received and why it received that score from the IB examiner. So we'll go through the annotated version that I have. And you'll notice, we'll go through page by page, but you'll notice the first page is really starting with the research proposal and the action plan. And again, this I got 22 out of 25 marks, which is a 7. So you will lead with your question. Student number, you'll notice that this is not perfect. There are some errors in terms of spelling and those types of things, but this is still an example that the IB holds out. So minor mistakes will not undermine your IA. If the company wishes to remain anonymous, in this case, you'll see that this is blacked out or redacted. We can definitely make that happen for the final version of your IA. And you'll notice that this student includes the word count for their research proposal. So getting into the research proposal, this is very similar to the format you were given. You start with a question, your theoretical framework, areas of the syllabus to be covered, the methodology, how you're going to go about gathering that information. And you'll notice that it has most of the same pieces. In this case, they're including shadowing, which is where you follow around a decision maker or a worker at their job and just see what they do. You act as their shadow, not really getting involved or participating, but just observing what they do on a daily basis. Organizations, the list of people they're going to talk to, methods of data collection, anticipated difficulties, and then you'll notice that they also have their timeline. So all of these pieces that were in the example research proposal, the student has as well. So this is their formal cover page. It's addressed to the firm that they made the target of their IA, their IA title or research question, the author's name, the date, the class it's for, the number of words, and this is the honesty statement. So confirming their academic integrity while writing this IA. Sometimes you'll need an acknowledgements page, and sometimes you may want to include it if someone's been particularly helpful, particularly the company that you've targeted and done research on. Again, expressing your gratitude is a good thing to do typically because of all the help and time that they've given you. Table of contents. This is a very ugly table of contents. I would not recommend doing it. There's a very easy way, particularly if you use Google Docs. If you use, and I'll show you here, headings, so heading 1, 2, 3, you can automatically create a table of contents at the end of your presentation. Sorry, at the end of your report. And it creates it automatically, and it's very easy, and it's fairly attractive, whereas this one is not so much. Now we get into the start of the IA itself. So typically it starts with an abstract. This is just a summary. The abstract does not count towards the 2,000 word limit, but it's still good practice to include a word count for this, just so the reader knows how long this is. But again, this is not counted. This is just a summary of your overall IA, but you should include it. All right, now we get into the meat of the IA. One thing I like about this, each section has a clear heading, and if you use the headings from Google Docs, these things, it makes it very easy to create a table of contents later on. So introduction, research question, talks about the reasons for this research question, why it's important, then gets into the method, provides all the data that was collected, the summary data that was collected. You'll notice that the raw data is not here, but summary pie charts and those types of things are included to help the reader understand what kind of data was collected. A SWOT that was done kind of in conjunction with the company. Ansoff matrix. You'll notice that the student defines key terms. They also use in-text citations, which are awesome. You should definitely use in-text citations and footnotes, depending on the nature of the source. This is an example of analysis here. This is something you should try to do with BM all the time. Use words like potentially, may, might. There are very few absolutes in business or in life. So please try to avoid using the words will, because things won't always happen, just as we predicted. They provide the data and then also analyze the implication. So this is showing the student showing their ability to analyze. A lot of this information that's presented in the body then becomes the basis for the recommendations and conclusions at the end. So they did miss one mark for some of the tools. You'll notice if you look at the examiner's comments, in this case, the examiner thought that they did not go into enough depth. And in this case, I think it may have been because they did not use Ansoff's matrix completely enough in their analysis. So you'll notice that each of these, so each of the data charts is analyzed and explained here in the body. I think this is a little bit confusing. I think it would have been better if they had included maybe the chart here, the pie chart, or the data summary here, and then they had the explanation immediately following. That makes more intuitive sense. Now, if you include it like this, then you have to go back up to and find figure 6. So personally, I think that's a little bit less organized, and maybe I would not recommend necessarily doing that for your IA. All right, back to the conclusion. The conclusion is a little bit short in this case, and that was one of the places that the student also lost a mark. Criterion E, conclusions, they didn't list or suggest additional information they could gather, areas for further study, and that would have gotten this student another mark, so they would have had a 23 out of 25. The appendices follow the bibliography and references. So for the HLIA, you typically use fewer sources, but you use sources nonetheless. You need a page for them. And the appendices typically include all the raw data that was collected, or much of the raw data, samples of the surveys, samples of the questions, those types of things that you use in the process of gathering information for your IA. So this is the Scrapbook IA exemplar, and in a separate recording, I'll go through the Rexel IA as well.